Mia thought her father died before she was born, but the truth was hiding inside one sealed envelope. When she finally opened it, the name on her birth certificate didn't match anything her mother ever told her. And the choice she made next pulled Dr. Phil and millions of viewers into a family secret buried for 28 years. The studio lights felt too bright for Mia, almost like they were exposing every fear she'd carried since childhood. She sat on the edge of her seat, her fingers wrapped tightly around a weathered birth certificate that looked older than she was. The corners were soft, cracked, like it had been opened and closed 100 times before, just not by her. When Dr. Phil asked her to place it on the table, her hands trembled, and the paper made a soft tapping sound that somehow echoed across the entire stage. For a moment, Dr. Phil didn't say a single word. He just stared at the name typed on the father's line, his expression shifting in a way the cameras rarely caught. Not shock, not confusion, something colder, something heavier. The kind of look that tells an audience there's more to this story than anyone has admitted. Mia swallowed hard. "I grew up believing my father died in a car accident before I was born," she said, her voice trying to stay steady but cracking at the edges. You could hear that quiet ache in her words, the kind of ache that comes from building your identity on a story that feels safe, only to find out it might be a lie. Dr. Phil lifted his eyes from the certificate. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In my mother's closet," Mia whispered, "hidden in a box under old winter coats. She always told me my father was gone. But this name isn't the man she said died." The audience leaned in. Even the crew members seemed to freeze. There's a special kind of silence that happens right before someone's life changes. It's tight and electric, like the world is holding its breath. That's the silence Mia fell into. She looked at Dr. Phil, her lips shaking before the words even left them. Did my mother lie to me? Or is someone else out there pretending to be my father? Her question hung in the air, filling the entire studio with a thick tension. And for the first time in all the years Dr. Phil had been on television, he didn't immediately have an answer. He leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands, and let out a slow exhale that only made the room heavier. "Mia," he said quietly, "before I can explain what I know, before you can understand what this document really means, you need to hear how this all began." The camera zoomed in on Mia's face, catching the fear behind her eyes. She wasn't just scared of the truth. She was scared of what it might take away from her, her identity, her story, the version of her childhood she had used to survive. Somewhere in the audience, someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." But Mia didn't hear any of it. Her focus stayed locked on Dr. Phil, because she could tell from the weight in his voice that whatever happened next was not going to be simple. It was going to dig into the bones of her family history, into the things her mother tried to hide, maybe even into things she wasn't supposed to find. And as she braced herself, you could feel the entire story start to shift. This wasn't just a mix-up. It wasn't an innocent mistake. It wasn't even a misunderstanding. This was a secret, a deliberate one, and it had shaped her entire life. Dr. Phil leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and spoke with a softness that hinted at the storm to come. "To understand this birth certificate," he said, "we have to go back to the moment your world first started to crack." The studio lights dimmed slightly, as if even they understood the gravity of what was coming. A hush fell over the stage, because the truth was no longer waiting quietly in a box in her mother's closet. It was here now, alive, breathing, ready to change everything. How well do we really know the people who raise us, and what happens when the truth finally demands to be heard? 3 weeks before the studio lights, before Dr. Phil's expression shifted into something he couldn't hide, Mia was living a life most people would call ordinary. Too ordinary. Her days felt like reruns. Same alarm, same job, same quiet dinners alone in her small apartment where the walls seemed to echo reminders of everything she didn't have. She tried not to think about her father, the man she had mourned without memories. Her mother always said it was better that way. Some losses, she'd whisper, are easier when the details stay buried. But grief has a strange way of settling into the cracks of a room. Mia carried it everywhere, like a shadow that followed her even in the brightest moments. That night, She had just kicked off her shoes and set her phone on the counter. Steam fogged up the bathroom mirror as she ran a warm shower, wanting nothing more than to rinse off another long day. The phone buzzed once, then again, then a third time, longer this time, persistent. She glanced at the screen through the crack in the bathroom door. Her stomach tightened. She didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the quiet part of her that had always suspected something in her life didn't fit. She answered anyway. A breath, a pause, the faint hum of static, then a voice, deep, older, shaking like it carried years of regret. You deserve to know who I really am. Just 8 words, but they hit Mia like a hammer. She stood frozen in her hallway, water dripping from her hair on her shirt. The voice didn't match anyone she knew. It didn't even sound familiar. And yet something inside her responded, a tiny spark that whispered, "This means something." "Who is this?" she whispered. But the line went dead. Silence swallowed the room, the kind of silence that feels intentional. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she replayed the voice in her mind. The tone, the hesitation, the way the final words cracked, like the man on the other end was scared, not of her, but of what telling her the truth might reveal. She tried to shake it off, but the call left her with an uneasy electricity she couldn't ignore. She checked her voicemail out of habit, expecting nothing, but there it was, an unheard message from the same blocked number. Her thumb hovered over the play button. The recording crackled. A breath. Then the same voice, this time sounding rushed, almost desperate. "Mia, I am sorry. I should have been there. But I didn't have a choice." The message cut off abruptly, as if someone had yanked the phone away. Her hands trembled as she slid down to the floor. Questions jammed together in her mind like broken glass. How did he know her name? Why did he sound sorry? Why now? Why after 28 years? She called her mother. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. That never happened. Her mother picked up every time, even when she was annoyed or tired or busy. The silence felt wrong. Something inside Mia snapped into place, a quiet determination she didn't know she had. She grabbed her keys, drove to her mother's house, and let herself in with the spare hidden under the plant pot. Every light was off. The air felt stale, untouched. It was clear her mother hadn't been home in hours. That's when Mia started searching. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that something in her life was fractured, and this time she couldn't pretend not to see the cracks. She opened drawers, boxes, old photo albums. Nothing, until she reached the back of the hallway closet, where a stack of winter coats hung unevenly, like they'd been hastily moved. Behind them sat a small cardboard box, dusty, untouched, but not forgotten. Her name was written on the lid in her mother's handwriting, and underneath it, in slanted cursive, "For Mia, when she's ready." Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside were old baby photos, a hospital bracelet, and at the very bottom, a manila envelope. She felt it before she saw it. The weight of it, the thickness of the paper. The seal had been broken. This wasn't new. Someone had opened it before, maybe many times. She slid out the single sheet inside. Her birth certificate, but the name printed under father was not the man her mother had described her whole life. Not the man in the stories. Not the man whose grave Mia had visited every year on her birthday. This was the name she recognized from family whispers that ended too quickly. The name she once overheard her aunt say with a trembling sigh. A name her mother always shut down with a sharp, "We don't talk about him." Mia's heart hit her ribs so hard she felt dizzy. She stared at the name again, as if it might rearrange itself into something familiar, something safe. But the truth stared back at her. Not dead, not gone, not the man she believed was her father. Someone else entirely. Her world didn't just crack, it split open. With shaking fingers, Mia booked a plane ticket to see her mother in person. She needed answers. But when she arrived at her mother's house the next morning, her mother stood in the doorway, pale, nervous, blocking the entrance. Her voice trembled. "Mia, please. Not this. Not now." Mia pulled the birth certificate from her bag. Her mother went silent. Her eyes filled with something Mia had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. A deep, aching guilt. Mia stepped closer. Tell me the truth. Her mother shook her head slowly. Some truths, she whispered, are dangerous. And then she closed the door. Hard. Mia's heart sank. The plane ticket, the envelope, the birth certificate, the voice on the phone, all of it tangled into a single, suffocating question. Why would a mother hide the one truth that could define her child's entire identity? As Mia stood on the porch, the wind cold against her face, she felt a strange shift inside her. Like she had just stepped onto a path she couldn't turn back from. Because once a secret calls your name, ignoring it becomes impossible. If her mother wouldn't tell her the truth, someone else would. The drive back to her childhood home felt different this time. The road she'd traveled 1,000 times before suddenly felt foreign, as if every mile was leading her not toward comfort, but toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. Old trees leaned over the pavement, their branches scraping the sky like bony fingers. Even the morning sun seemed muted, giving everything a washed-out, uneasy glow. Mia's grip tightened around the steering wheel as her mind replayed her mother's trembling words over and over again. Some truths are dangerous. Dangerous to who? Dangerous to what? And why now, after 28 years? When Mia pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller than she remembered. The paint was peeling. A shutter hung crooked, gently tapping in the wind. But the feeling that hit her the hardest wasn't nostalgia. It was dread. A heavy, sinking dread that curled low in her stomach the moment she stepped out of the car. Inside, the living room smelled like lavender cleaner and something else, something smoky, faint, and bitter. She paused. Her mother hated the smell of smoke. Always had. So why did it linger in the walls like a secret? The house was quiet. Too quiet. Even the floor creaks seemed to wait their turn. Mia walked room to room, her eyes scanning the familiar furniture, the framed pictures, the floral couch she used to fall asleep on during thunderstorms. Everything looked normal, but felt wrong. Then she noticed something. Several photo frames on the hallway wall had tiny scratches around the edges, as if they'd been removed recently. And behind one frame, someone had peeled back the faded wallpaper just enough to reveal old tape marks, as if a picture once hung there and was ripped away. Her heartbeat quickened. She stepped into the den, where her mother used to sew and watch late-night shows. A desk drawer was half open, a drawer her mother always kept locked. Inside was a stack of papers, receipts, old envelopes, and one torn letter burned around the edges, as if someone tried to destroy it but couldn't bring themselves to finish. Mia unfolded it carefully. Only half of the letter remained, but the words on it felt like a punch to the chest. I can't protect her forever. If he finds out she survived. The rest of the sentence was missing, eaten away by flame. Mia's breath caught. Survived? Who? Her mother? Her? She stared at the burnt edges, her mind spinning. Her mother had always avoided talking about the year she was born, always brushing off the questions with excuses. But this was something different. This was fear. This was warning. This was danger she never knew existed. A sudden floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around, heart pounding. It was her Aunt Lila, standing in the doorway, wide-eyed, startled, and holding a grocery bag like a shield. Mia? You scared me, Lila whispered, her voice shaky in a way that made Mia instantly suspicious. Aunt Lila, Mia said, holding up the torn letter. What is this? What happened back then? Why won't anyone tell me anything? Lila looked at the paper as if it were a ghost. Her face drained of color. Oh, honey, you weren't supposed to find that. Find what? Mia snipped. Why is everyone acting like I'm a danger? Lila set her groceries down slowly, carefully, like any sudden movement might break the moment. She clasped her hands together and stared at the floor before speaking. I shouldn't say this, she whispered, but I saw him once. The man on your birth certificate, holding you. You were just a baby. The room tilted. Mia felt heat rush to her face. What? You saw him? You knew him? Lila nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. Your mother swore us to silence. She said it was the only way to keep you safe. None of us questioned her. We thought she knew what she was doing. Safe from who? Mia opened her mouth to ask, but a sudden loud knock rattled the front door. Both women froze. 3 heavy bangs. Then silence. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her blood turned cold. She stepped toward the door as her phone vibrated again. 3 more times. The knocks came once more, harder, more urgent, as if whoever was outside wasn't just waiting, but demanding. Aunt Lila whispered, "Don't open it." But the voice in Mia's memory, the trembling man who said, "You deserve to know who I really am," echoed through her chest like a heartbeat. Her hand hovered inches from the doorknob. She could hear breathing on the other side. Slow, heavy, familiar. Everything in her begged to stop, to step away, to run. But another part of her, a louder, braver part, wanted answers. Real answers. The kind that change everything. She reached for the lock, and just before her fingers touched the metal, the person on the other side whispered her name through the door. Mia. Soft, broken, recognizable. Her entire world narrowed into that one sound. Why would someone hide a truth big enough to knock on your door 28 years later? The voice on the other side of the door didn't shout, didn't push, didn't threaten. It whispered her name in a way that felt fragile, like it might shatter if she didn't answer. Mia Froze. Her hand hovered over the lock. Her breath caught halfway up her throat. Aunt Lila pressed a shaking hand to her shoulder, whispering, "Mia, please. Think. You don't know who that is." But Mia did know. Somewhere deep in her bones, she recognized that voice. She had only heard it twice, once on the call, once in the voicemail. But there are certain things the body remembers before the mind does. She twisted the lock. The clicking sound felt like a fuse being lit. The door creaked open, letting in a slice of cold air, and there he stood. The man from the phone. The man whose name sat on the father's line of her birth certificate. He looked older than she expected, with tired eyes and hair peppered with gray. But the resemblance was unmistakable. The curve of his jaw, the shape of his eyes, the way his mouth tightened when he looked at her, like he'd been holding back words for decades. His voice cracked. "Mia, I didn't think you'd open the door." Mia stepped back, unsure whether to run or collapse or scream. 1,000 thoughts slammed into her, but only one came out. "Are you him?" The man swallowed, glancing past her at Aunt Lila, who stood frozen like she'd seen a ghost. Then he met Mia's eyes again. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm your father." The words didn't just land. They detonated. Aunt Lila gasped. Mia's knees almost buckled. The world around her blurred for a second as the truth rearranged itself. She steadied herself on the doorframe, trying to breathe. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. He nodded slowly, painfully. "I know. Your mother wanted it that way." Before Mia could ask more, he glanced nervously down the street, scanning the shadows like he expected someone to follow him. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Can I come inside? I promise. I won't stay long." Mia hesitated. Aunt Lila's lips were pressed tight, trembling. But something in the man's expression, guilt, fear, longing, pulled Mia's heart toward him like gravity. She stepped back and let him enter. He didn't walk far. He stayed near the door, as if ready to leave at any moment. His hands shook slightly as he unzipped his jacket and pulled out a small manila envelope, the same type as the one her birth certificate had been hidden in. He offered it to her with both hands, like it was something sacred. This is why I called," he said. "It's time you saw it." Mia stared at the envelope. She didn't take it. She couldn't. Not yet. "You disappeared," she finally said, her voice trembling but sharp. "Why? Why did my mother hide you? Why did everyone pretend you were gone?" He closed his eyes, inhaled slowly, and when he opened them again, they looked wet with regret. "I never left you," he said quietly. "I was forced out." A chill crawled up Mia's spine. "By who?" He shook his head. "Someone who didn't want me near you. Someone who could hurt us both." Aunt Lila stiffened. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't bring him into this." Mia's head snapped toward her. "Who? Bring who into this?" But the man didn't let Lila interrupt. "Your mother tried to protect you," he continued, stepping closer. "More than you'll ever know. She didn't lie to hurt you. She lied because telling the truth could have destroyed everything." Mia felt tears burn behind her eyes. What truth? He finally handed her the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. Thick. Official. She unfolded it with slow, trembling fingers. DNA report. Probability of paternity, 99.7%. Her vision blurred. Her breath stuttered. It was real. He was real. Her entire life had been rewritten with one number. She looked up at him, tears streaking her cheeks. Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you come for me? His jaw trembled. Because they threatened your life if I ever tried. They made me sign a document saying I forfeited all rights. They told me walking away was the only way to keep you safe. Mia shook her head, trying to process the impossible. Safe from who? He hesitated too long. His eyes darted again to the windows, the door, the driveway. Then he whispered a name Mia recognized, a name she had heard in hushed stories whispered at family gatherings, a name always followed by silence. Someone who wasn't her father, but who had been present the night she was born. Her stomach dropped. You're lying, she said instinctively, because believing it felt too big, too terrifying. He shook his head. I wish I were. But that's why your mother listed the wrong father on your birth certificate. To hide you. To erase you from someone else's radar. The room pulsed with tension. Mia felt her entire childhood twisting into something she didn't recognize. Why tell me now? Because, he said, voice breaking, he's back. And if he finds you, the truth won't stay hidden much longer. Aunt Lila covered her mouth. Mia felt the world tilt. The man straightened, wiping his face. Dr. Phil can help you get answers. He can protect you in ways we couldn't. That's why I reached out to his team. That's why we're all here. You deserve the truth. The safe version of it. He stepped back toward the door. I'm ready to talk, he said gently. Whenever you are. Then he paused. Oh, one more thing. I'm here because Dr. Phil flew me in today. Mia blinked. He what? He wants to talk to all of us. Together. His eyes softened. I'm supposed to head to the studio now. He opened the door, cold air rushing in. You're not alone anymore, Mia. And then he left, disappearing into the daylight like a ghost returning to the living. Mia's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The man from the cafe. He's here. Asking to speak to Mia. Dr. Phil's producer. Mia stared at the message, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Everything was converging. Her mother's silence. Her father's warnings. That burned letter. And the name? The dangerous name, whispered like a curse. How far would you go to protect someone you love from your past mistakes? The studio felt colder than Mia remembered. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the weight of what she was about to face. The seats were filled, the cameras were focused, and the quiet murmurs from the audience died the second she stepped onto the stage. It was the kind of silence that feels like the universe holding its breath. Dr. Phil stood at the center, hands folded, expression steady but heavy. He nodded gently for her to take her seat. She moved slowly, each step feeling like she was walking through thick water. She sat down, gripping her own hands so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Behind the curtain, someone shifted. A shadow, tall and familiar in a way she didn't understand yet, hovered just out of sight. And on the opposite side of the stage, a slimmer figure paced nervously, her mother. Dr. Phil's voice broke the silence. Mia, today, you said you wanted the full truth. All of it. No more pieces. No more secrets. She nodded, her throat tight. I need to know. He looked toward the side door. Then let's start with the person who raised you. The door opened slowly, and her mother stepped out. She looked smaller than Mia remembered, her shoulders hunched, her face pale, her eyes glassy with fear and something else, guilt. She took a seat across from Mia, but she couldn't look her daughter in the eye. Mia felt a sharp ache in her chest. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Her mother clasped her hands together, breathing shakily. Because telling you the truth meant putting you in danger. And I swore I would never let that happen. Not again. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Danger from who? Her mother's eyes flicked briefly to the curtain, fear flashing like lightning. From the man who was there the night Mia was born, she said. From a man who insisted she never be connected to her real father. From a man with enough power to make that demand stick. The audience murmured. Mia's heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Her voice came out trembling. "Mom, who was this man?" Her mother finally met her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Your grandfather," she whispered. "My father." The words hit like a blow. Mia stared, confused. "My grandfather? But why? Why would he care who my father was?" Her mother wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Because he hated him. Because he believed your father was unworthy. Dangerous. Because he wanted to control everything. Me, my life, and eventually you." Mia swallowed hard. She remembered her grandfather vaguely. Stern, cold, distant. He died when she was 8. But she never imagined he could have shaped her life before she could even speak, before she could even breathe. Her mother continued, voice cracking. "He threatened your father. Told him if he didn't disappear, he'd never get the chance to meet you. And worse. So your father left to protect you. He signed the paper. And I went along with it because I was terrified. Terrified of my own father. Terrified of losing you." Mia felt her breath catch. "So you lied to save me?" "That lie," her mother whispered, "was the only shield I had." Before Mia could respond, Dr. Phil raised a hand and turned toward the curtain. "Mia," he said gently, "there is someone else who needs to be part of this conversation." The curtain parted. Her biological father stepped onto the stage. He looked even more nervous than before, his eyes darting between Mia and her mother. He hesitated for a full 3 seconds before taking the seat beside her. The entire audience held perfectly still. He took a shaky breath. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said slowly. "Not even for a day." Mia's eyes burned. "Then why didn't you come back? Why didn't you try again?" Her father's chest rose and fell with a painful sigh. "Because your grandfather wasn't the only danger," he said. "He had people, influence. And I was young. I was stupid. I believed him when he said you would be hurt if I ever tried to see you." Her mother nodded through tears. "He wasn't lying. Your grandfather meant every threat he made." Mia felt torn in two. One part of her wanted to cry. Another part wanted to scream. But the strongest part, the part that had been waiting her whole life for answers, leaned forward. "I found a burned letter," she said, "in the house. It said someone couldn't protect me forever. What was I supposed to be protected from?" Her mother inhaled sharply. Her father closed his eyes. Dr. Phil waited silently, allowing the weight of Mia's question to settle. Her father finally spoke. "Mia," he whispered, "you weren't supposed to survive your birth." The words echoed in the studio like a shockwave. "What?" Mia's voice cracked. He continued, softly but steadily. "Your grandfather didn't want you born. He thought having you would ruin everything. Your mother's life, his reputation. When you survived the complications that night, your mother grabbed you and ran. And that was the beginning of everything we've lived with." Mia felt her chest tighten. The truth was bigger, darker, more tangled than she ever expected. And for the first time, she understood the kind of fear her mother must have lived with, the kind of regret her father carried, the reason her childhood felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. Dr. Phil cleared his throat. "There's one more thing," he said softly. "Your mother brought something today, something she's been carrying for years." Her mother reached into her purse, hands trembling, and pulled out a small sealed envelope. Yellowed, fragile, the edges worn from time. She placed it gently in front of Mia. "I wrote this for your 18th birthday," she said. "But I couldn't give it to you. I wasn't brave enough." Mia picked it up slowly. Her name was written on it in faded ink. Her heart pounded as she slipped her finger under the seal, tearing it open. She unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the first line, and she gasped, a sharp inhale that made the entire audience lean forward, holding on to the final reveal suspended on her lips. "Some truths don't just change your past. They change everything you thought your future would be." Mia held that letter in her hands, her breath shaking as the final truth settled into her heart. And in the quiet that followed, something powerful happened. Not fear, not anger, but release. Because sometimes the truth doesn't break us. Sometimes it frees us from the stories we were never meant to carry. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who might need the courage that your words inspire. And if you want more stories that explore truth, family, and forgiveness, you're welcome to stay with us for the next chapter of this journey. We're here to face these moments together.